Welcome everyone, my name is Susan Patterson. The event you're about to see on how to protect youth from the explosion in cyber exploitation is a critically important event for anyone who works with youth, as sextortion and the way AI is being used to blackmail people are two examples of cyber exploitation that's going faster than human trafficking. With the advent of 5G, criminal organizations in places as far away as Nigeria and the Ivory Coast now have access to our children. As a result, cyber exploitation has become big business. Criminal organizations have set up telemarketing type businesses where they have 14-year-old girls chat up teen boys and exchange compromising pictures. Then the closer comes in to blackmail them. As a result, we're seeing a dramatic rise in teen suicide from both boys and girls. It's important we raise awareness regarding this. Our keynote speaker is Opal Singleton, one of the top cyber exploitation experts in the world. Before I turn you over to the event, I want to offer a resource to those of you who work with youth, as the Center for Missing and Exploited Children now has videos, posters, and what to do if one's being sextorted. You can pause the video and write down the web address here. We begin our event with Pastor Joshua Buckley leading us in prayer.
Information that you impart to us from its speakers. And we thank you so much for what you are about to reveal to us and what we're about to hear. Thank you for these advocates, for these men and women who are on the front lines dealing with these issues that are threatening our families and our children. We pray now for your guidance, pray for your anointing, and pray for your spirit to speak to each of us, that we might know how to apply this information in the places where you planted us. Thank you for Susan, and thank you for those who will be making their presentations today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. My name is Susan Patterson. I'm the director of Through God's Grace Ministry. And what I've done is create a community of churches working together, mainly through work groups. I've been doing this for 12 years. I've talked to over 100,000 people in churches. And I was asked over and over again, can you put me in touch with the church who's also working so that we can share information? So now we're doing this all over the world. We do this mainly through work groups. I've had speaker work groups. At the beginning of this year, I did an event like this on mobilizing the community to end human trafficking and cyber exploitation, and everyone shared what they're doing to call people to action. It was great. That for today, I'm doing the introduction. Then we're going to have Sylvia speak, how churches can support families whose children have been trafficked. Sylvia, whose daughter was trafficked, has been working for the last 6 years as a parent advocate with families whose children have been trafficked, whose children are missing. And she's going to provide a couple suggestions for what churches can do to support these families. And then we have our keynote, who is Opal, who I'll introduce later. Sylvia's going to talk very briefly. And so for those of you who want to know more about that, who want to put your local nonprofit in touch with Sylvia and the agency she works with, so you could start a parent program in your state or your country, wherever you are. This particular video, how I got my daughter away from her sex trafficker, is a video that Sylvia and I did together where she outlines her program. You can find it at our website, throughgodsgrace.com, on the Education Resource tab. So I also wrote a book, The Power of the Church to End Human Trafficking, a step-by-step guide on how to take effective action. The pastors who've read this told me it was the best thing they've read because it's practical. It gives you 30 different things you can do, how to do it, very short, 110 pages. It covers 6 ways to raise awareness, 8 ways to engage the youth, how to effectively recruit foster parents, and much more. One resource I want to share from that book that pertains to today's event is this book. I have a friend and her best friend, the way they found out that their 7-year-old was being sextorted is their 7-year-old tried to commit suicide. So obviously, children should never be on the internet unsupervised, but they're liable to come across, porn or sextortion being at their friend's house. So this picture, Christine Jensen is really the expert on how to talk to little kids. Here's a couple examples from her book. Bad pictures show the private parts of the body that we cover with a bathing suit. She's explaining what porn is in a way that children can understand and what to do if they ever see it, which is to turn, run, and tell. So here's my website. In addition to books and videos, we also have flyers for your event. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Sylvia.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, everyone. I just want to say thank you again for this opportunity to share my story on how my daughter became a victim of human trafficking. So I'm going to tell just a few things about what I struggled as a parent. As a parent, 10 years ago, actually, I did not know what human trafficking was. I had no idea until it actually hit home. So the way that my daughter was actually lured into trafficking, she was introduced by a friend, and this friend actually she met at a school um, which she was enrolled. So not knowing that her friends were actually connected to or knew actually traffickers or pimps. So, how my daughter was introduced to this trafficker was that this friend invited her to a birthday party. And this birthday party actually was in the neighborhood. And that is where her so called friend introduced her to a trafficker. And so from there, that's exactly where the nightmare actually started for me as a parent. As time went on, I started noticing her behavior changing, her attitude, not interested in school, constant fights with me. And during those actually from 2014, 2016, 2 years that I experienced just devastating um, situations where my daughter would be missing, not just for a couple of days or weeks, but she ended up missing for a couple of months. And that was so hard as a parent. You wonder, okay, where's my daughter at? Who is she with? Is she okay? So there was a lot of sleepless nights that I went through that I did not know if even my daughter was even alive or if she was eating. A lot of things went through my mind as, you know, is she being beaten? And to be quite honest, she actually was. There was even a particular time where I recall my daughter coming home and her knees was so scraped that they were bleeding. And I asked her, what happened to you? And she actually ended up telling me, she says, Mom, you won't believe what happened. She says, me and my friend were in a car, and of course it had to be a trafficker. And she mentioned that they had to jump out the car to get away from this person. So that is how she ended up getting so bruised and cut. But this actually behavior continued during the past 2 years. That not only did it affected me, but it also affected my other children. So I am a mother of six, and this was actually so hard to even deal with because my other children kept seeing their sister leaving, coming back home, fighting with me, stealing my car. She totally just changed. It was no longer my daughter that I once knew. And so, as I struggled for those 2 years, that I thought it was a particular, just a rebellion, a behavior that it was a teenage rebellion, right? Come to my surprising, it was actually um, learned that she was being trafficked, not just by one trafficker, but several traffickers. And again, time went by. I actually witnessed that I had traffickers had the nerve to even come pick her up right in front of my home, and just seeing the phone calls, seeing the how they have the power and control just by a simple phone call, that she's out that door and no matter what I said I couldn't stop her. And so that continued again 2 years where she actually fell deep into now being trafficked again by another trafficker. And so that's when I started fighting, seeing that what was going on with my daughter. Again, as a parent, by this time I was already through depression. I was already, just out of my mind. And so one thing that I can say that did help me was actually my church really did play a big role in that, because I did not know who to turn to. I couldn't talk to anybody because I felt judged. I felt embarrassed. I felt ashamed. I felt angry. A lot of emotions were going through my mind. But the church actually did help me, where they prayed for me. Also, to got involved in a support group, and then That is where I met Susan and started getting educated. There, my pastor actually told me there is an event about human trafficking. I went there, and I met Susan because I wanted to know, how can I help my daughter? How can I understand her? Because as a parent, you don't know what is going on with your daughter, how you can communicate with her, because it's totally separation, totally isolation. And so, and and that's actually how I got support. You know, church plays a big role in these families. And so the way that I was actually able to take her from the traffickers was I put a tracking system in her phone without her knowing it. Because a phone, it's like crack, it's like cocaine. They can't leave that phone alone. And no matter how many times you take the phone, or they lose the phone, or police officers confiscate the phone for evidence, right? So that is actually how I was able to rescue my daughter. I had a case open. I dealt with social services. I dealt with wraparound services. So there was so much through there. But this one particular time is actually where my daughter was on a run. I had a lieutenant who was on my case. I was in constant contact with them. And I told them that my daughter was in danger and had the location. Boom, to make it story short, because I can go on forever. But the human trafficking tax actually went to the location because I knew the name of the hotel. They were able to pinpoint exactly where she was at, and that's when my daughter was rescued, and she was brought home. But bringing her home, that's actually only the beginning of the healing journey for her. And so to move forward faster is, as my daughter actually, even at the age of 18, while I thought this was over, it wasn't over, because they still have contact with friends, right? So my daughter was actually offered a diversion program. It took a lot of convincing, a lot of talking, and my daughter did take that program. And thankful to God that she graduated from the program, and she did actually turn her life around. And my daughter is a victorious. She's still healing. She's now a mother, and she's a wonderful mother. And the best thing about that is that my daughter and our relationship is even better than before. We laugh about things. We talk about what was going on. And do you remember this? And she goes, oh my God, there's a lot of things that she was able to block off. But we, up to today, we're actually able to talk about it, laugh about it, and how she also sees that it was wrong. So the things that I would like to share about how churches can actually help, because even in my line field of employment, where I'm actually a parent advocate and also a parent partner. Um, I have seen and worked with families where church communities come in handy, because with DCFS, when they need support, housing, or they need just funding, or they need just someone to help them make a phone call or help them connect them to resources, parents in the state of mind are so lost that they are actually going through their trauma also, because they've seen their child being trauma. So they're experiencing secondary trauma, which they don't realize that is actually happening. And so sometimes a parent needs to be actually grabbed by the hand and walk them through. Churches actually, like again, you guys don't know how big of a role you guys play. So important that the church is actually, in my belief and what I have seen in the line of field, is that churches come through. Churches can actually support the family, because parents that are going through this really don't have much support. And the church plays, again, I'm going to repeat it over, a big role in a family that is going through this. So a church can help families as welcome them in, no judgment, being trauma informed. And being trauma informed, it includes communication, respecting what the family life experience, and communicating respectfully, and being an active listener instead of telling them this is what you have to do, this is what you need to do. And also increasing the self-awareness, you know. So also being prepared, how to receive these families, um, even asking them, do you need anything, what can I do for you, calling on them, once a week, or even once a month, helping them, because a lot of these families that go through this, they're actually in poverty, or they're actually are even losing their jobs because families, parents actually have to go to court. They have to meet with their therapist. They have so much they have to meet with that they actually end up losing their jobs. Um, and also being prepared to what a family is experiencing and what they are going through, and also connecting them to other resources that you guys are connected to. Um, a support group, or even a food pantry. Sometimes they also need help with paying bills, and this actually lifts a lot of burden off of them. And also, one big thing is also being the bridge, bringing the bridge between the family and also social services. And not, again, a big thing is also not judging. So I hope this actually, what I share with you guys, has enlightened some things that families are go through, or things that as a church we can help parents. Because if we help parents, and we have a church community that's supporting them, and then the parents are actually healthy in the right state of mind, also the child can also receive that from the parent. Because if the parent's not right in their mind, how is the child going to see the parent? Like, my parent, it's not, she can't respond to me, she can't help me, so they're not going to turn to the parent. They're going to turn right back to the trafficker or to someone that's unhealthy. So we need a healthy parents to have a healthy child and a happy child. Thank you.
Outstanding, Sylvia. Thank you so much for that and for your courage and what you have to contribute. It's really outstanding to the community. So next up is Opal Singleton. She's the president and CEO of Million Kids. She also serves as the advisor to training and outreach coordinators for the Riverside County Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force. She supports the Riverside County Sheriff's Department through a Department of Justice grant. She is an instructor at USC, So Price Safe Communities Institute. She is the author of 2 books, Seduce, The Grooming of America's Teenagers, and Societal Shift, A World Without Borders, A Home Without Walls. She's a radio host and co-executive producer of a full-length documentary, Sextortion, The Hidden Pandemic, which is available on Amazon, iTunes, and Apple TV. Opal has educated more than 700,000 leaders on human trafficking and social media exploitation. Simply stated, Opal cares deeply about keeping kids safe from predators. Opal, thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to what you'll be sharing with us.
Well, thank you very much. When I hear that, I think, who is that person? Before I get started, I know it just happened, one foot in front of the other, just like the rest of you. Anyway, I want to make sure everybody can hear me and they can see the slides, because I have a lot of them, okay? So we're going to go very fast today. You are welcome to screenshot anything you want to, but we are recording it, and we will try to find a way, if you ask for it, to get it to you. It has a lot of slides in it, though, I'll warn you. I keep trying to take things out, and I can't bring myself to do it. So I'm with Million Kids. Please follow us. Go to millionkids.org, not .com.org, and sign up for our newsletter, because we have in the news each week with all the latest cases. I'm known for tens of thousands of hours of research. I've been doing this 15 years now, and I share that research. I'm all about train the trainer. That's why when Susan called, I said, you bet, let's do this thing. So go to millionkids.org. You can follow us on a series of other ones on there. We also have a private Facebook page, which ultimately will probably take off and put on our own website. But you have to be invited. You asked to join. It's called Million Kids Supporters on Facebook. That doesn't mean you have to send money, although you can if you want to, but that isn't what it's about. It's my way of educating you on the latest cases that are changing all the time, especially gangs and cartels, which I can't talk about on the radio and I can't talk about in public because I want to live by it. So it's Million Kids Supporters. Ask to join. Be sure enable the notifications so that you get notified of what is going on in there. So as she said, I work with the Sheriff Department. I tell you that because what I'm about to tell you is based on real cases. I don't, just go off with big numbers for me. So this particular talk today, I have a short period of time. This is really like a 2.5 hour seminar, a short period of time to tell you what is going on and changing. And it really has to do with technology. So I'm not going to talk so much about human trafficking as much as social media exploitation. The last 2 years, actually 3 years, coming out of COVID, we have seen an explosion of new technology, I think unlike ever happened in all of history. And it's very intense and it's happening all around us, and we don't seem to realize what it means. And that's what this talk is about. We're going to specifically today cover mass audience live streaming, the impact of global digital currency and artificial intelligence. But in the last 2 or 3 years, things have changed dramatically, and most people don't realize it. Last year, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children took 32 million reports about potential child exploitation. Now, 4 million of those are like parents who called in or kids who called in a case. 28 million is because the laws now require Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat to run the bots and algorithms on their platform. And that tells you that they have discovered more than 28 million potential images of child nudity or child exploitation. It's more than any law enforcement department can ever even investigate or understand how to go about that. That is 87,000 cases a day. This is the reason why when Susan called, I'm here, because we need leaders. I'm all about training leaders at this point so you can go out and do this kind of thing. The FBI 3 years ago said that there were more than 500,000 pedophiles online or predators at any given time. And they also said that more than 50% of their cases involve kids ages 12 to 15 years old. Think about that. We are putting our kids online with a lot of animated pornography and connecting them to an entire world just as they're coming out of puberty. And it's a crazy thing to think about. 90% of the contacts are made through chat rooms and instant messaging. So I have written a couple of books. My first one was Seduce, the Grooming of America's Teenagers. That's all about the grooming process. But Societal Shift, it's called Societal Shift, A World Without Borders, A Home Without Walls. And it is available on Amazon and at Million Kids. And so I want you to think about something. I feel very strongly about this. As I began to pray through this and realize what was happening, I felt the need to kind of sound the alarm for people to understand really what is happening in our society. If you think about your life in the timeline of history, I believe that where we're at today is the most important time in all of history, and especially for you to be a leader and create leaders of our young people. During the last 2 years, for the first time in all of history, the entire world was connected by 5G high-speed internet. That has incredible impact without all of us really realizing what that means. For the first time in history, poor countries all over the world, when they can't have other things, somebody was saying that earlier, they find a way to get the high-speed internet. That means that for the first time in history, our kids can reach the entire world, but the entire world can reach our kids. That is, think about the need for leadership in this kind of place to prepare this next generation to choose to use technology in a way that glorifies God and honors himself and others and protects the most vulnerable. Because, as I said, the entire world can now reach our kids, and our kids can reach the entire world. We have a little bit of a problem here, because our kids are smarter than us, okay? They know they go onto these apps, they set up this stuff, they know exactly what we're doing, and we're running along behind them going, you be careful on that thing now, because we don't know what they're doing, okay? And so this is really a challenge for leadership as you look at it. And as they said earlier, we're giving these to kids younger and younger. As cute as those kids are, they cannot tell you if they're on a little kid's video game or on the World Wide Web. It gets even scarier when you realize that nearly 70% of our children sleep with their phone. Just think about how good your decisions are at 3 o'clock in the morning. And here they are connected to the entire world. A world without borders for our kids is a world without borders for pimps, for predators, for pedophiles, for gangs, for cartels, and organized crime. And for us to put them in an environment where they're coexisting with these people and us not defining that for them is a true travesty. We need to stop in our tracks, get educated, and prepare this generation to understand who they're talking about. So we're going to look at some specific crimes based on technology today. Now, I'm going to just give you the highlights of this, but this thing is changing so fast. I really want you to be able to know it and understand what it's all about. The biggest one that few people talk about is mass audience live streaming. This is all the apps that your kids are on, okay? And what I mean by that is think about myself or, others. I'm old enough to remember MySpace. That's scary, okay? But, I go on Facebook. I have 45 friends. I post flowers and butterflies, and we all go on. I know my friends. I block my friends. Our kids do not have that privilege anymore. When they're on any of these particular sites, they're on there with millions of people that they can talk to, and those people can talk back to them and get information about them. So let me give you a real live example of this. I had a mother at a Rotary, and good mother, and she said to me, my daughter's doing so good on TikTok because, and by the way, I'm on TikTok. I like the dogs and cats, if I'm sitting in traffic, but there's a lot of TikTok I don't look at, just like my TV. So anyway, this girl's on TikTok, and mom's real proud of her because she's got 1 million followers. Well, it's not all that impressive. She wants to be an influencer, okay? That's not all that impressive. A lot of people that are influencers have 5 million, 10 million. I know one that has 17 million. And we're just getting started, okay? So I said to mom, how old is your daughter? And she said, well, she's 11. So I'm saying, well, mom, let's think about this a minute. And if you have children in your life, I'd encourage you to have this conversation. I say, if your daughter has 1 million followers, what percentage of them might be pedophiles? Have you ever thought about that? And I ask this for kids all the time in schools, and they'll go, 20% or 50%. What if it's only 1%? That's 10,000 potential pedophiles. This girl wants to be discovered, right? All a pedophile has to do on TikTok is sign up and wait. They go to those categories. Instagram, they do the same thing. Hashtag hot cam girls. And they sign up and wait and go, oh, baby, you're hot. Meet me on Instagram. I'm an agent. I'll make you famous. Get me more of those photos, make them better. So they not only, our kids are talking to millions of people, but millions of people are connecting with our kids, and they can get the list of all their followers. So it's a game changer completely. Now, I'm a firm believer that technology isn't good or bad. I always say it's kind of like a car. You can take a car off to a university and get a degree. You can go off to a faith-based place and get a spiritual experience. You can take the same car down to the strip club and get yourself in trouble. It is not the car, it's how you prepare the driver of the car. But we do not put little children behind the wheel of a car. And we need to think about how that works. Now, there are many good uses for technology in the faith-based community. And we're using one now. So there's a young lady here from Africa, and I'm like, yes, this is good, okay? You can connect with people all over the world. I'd say make cyber missionaries out of your teenagers. Get them to raise the money for a well in Kenya, and then live stream over as the kids in Kenya use their money to dig a well. There are many positive ways to do this. You can build online support groups to reach foster youth, especially as they're transitioning, because they need it. They are the most vulnerable. 60% of kids in sex trafficking come from the social services system. And many of these regular kids are living at risk. It's a way to communicate. You can educate your teens and your parents about how to use social media wisely, but also how to support those people that have been exploited. So every one of us are going to make a mistake online. We need to just get ready for that. Every one of us at times. You know, I see grandpas that are 78 years old that have put out $50,000 to date somebody online that's on an oil rig in Siberia somewhere, you know. Every one of us can be caught up in this. We need God's grace to do that. Just because it's cyber doesn't make it different. Now I want to address the impact of apps that have money transfer on them, because this is really what is happening. Every app, every one of your chat rooms now are getting money transferred. So it can be a good thing. You can shop all over the world. You can sell things online. You can do subscriptions. You can raise money. But it can also be used in a very bad way. And that is what is happening, because as third world countries are starting to understand that they can connect right into our homes with our 13-year-old teenager and get them to send a naked photo, that teenager already has a Bitcoin account and they know how to pay off blackmailers. And so it's changing everything just like that. So we're going to talk about the crime of sextortion. So there are many kinds of sextortion. And so I'm just going to highlight a couple because I want you to see how fast all of this is changing. Now, we have for a long time had individual pedophiles. They may want more photos. I'm going to show you why in a minute. They might want a master-slave relationship and control that victim. I've seen many of those cases. They may want to meet up with that victim and harm them. And they may want to harm the victim and their families. And we've got to talk about that. Because when the crime of sextortion first came out, so many people had an idea, you know, the kid would go, oh, I'm in trouble and they want this online. And our first reaction was, what the heck were you thinking? And we would blame the kid and we would say, well, it's just some photos online, without understanding the depth of destruction that can take place in a sextortion case. I'll show you one where there are groups of pedophiles and they're getting these photos because they want to support a dark web ring. But the big one that is scary today is these overseas telemarketing companies that are cartel driven. So we're going to talk about that. So the first one we're going to talk about is deep fakes. And that is artificial intelligence. You're hearing all this artificial intelligence talk every day on the news. Well, what happens in here is every one of us can become the victim of artificial intelligence and a deep fake. It doesn't matter who you are, how old you are. They can pretend to have your grandchildren and modify the photos on there. They can pretend that you're being sexually violated and they want money. A deep fake is using technology to change the image. They can, my picture's all over the place online, okay? They can cut off my face and put it on a nude body in a sexual component. I hope she's skinny and pretty, by the way, and young. Anyway, but they can. And that can happen to every one of you. And they can also alter your voice. So be careful, especially if you're older and you answer the phone yourself. Be careful what you say, like with a telemarketer. Don't be using words like yes, or are you talking about my grandson, Andy, okay? Because they can take that information and alter both your voice and your photo. So one of the challenges in prosecuting deep fakes is our laws are not ready for it, because of the fact it isn't a real person. It's the photo of somebody, but the body isn't, the sexual component isn't. And so this is going to be a challenge, and we're really going to need to support the victims of this, because they may not be able to get legal recourse right off the bat. So one of the things I would tell you, I made up this word, by the way, I like that word, but get a code word between you and your family. So that if they're saying, well, we've got your grandson, oh, you mean Andy, you know, that you'll know if you're talking to Andy, okay, Andy, what's the code word? And if he says wackadoodle, you know it's Andy. Otherwise, it can be a deep fake. So I suggest every family get a code word that is unique to them and that they will know. Have family discussions about where this is headed, because literally every one of us, your kid may one day come home from school crying and all upset because their naked photo has been sent all over school. And the kid is going, it's not me, Mom. You know, okay, it's my head, but that's not me. How do you fight this to keep them from being bullied? So you need to have these kinds of discussions about that and talk about empathy for victims of sextortion, because we all need grace, okay? And when you talk with your kids about doing what's right online, you can say to them, you know, I hope you don't, but if you do, I hope you'll trust me enough to come to me. We're all going to need grace in this situation. So one of the things we need to really make clear with kids is social media is used by all people. Some of them are good and others want to do harm. The biggest thing I deal with both the kids and the parent, by the way, is this naive thought, it's not going to happen to me. You know, and I'll be smart. I'll know if I'm being catfished. Or my kid, you know, I had one the other day, I thought I would lose my mind because they had used the F word, and she's 11 and she wants to meet up with this guy. And I'm saying, you know, she's talking about meeting someone. And well, I don't even think she knows what that word means, and she doesn't really mean it. It's amazing the kinds of cases I deal with. So some of the challenge in working with your kids of social media is gives a false sense of reality. And that's true of every one of us, by the way, including myself. When we go online, we see what we want to see, and we ignore what we don't want to see. I'll just share you something personal in a minute. I was a widow for 2 years. I was the worst widow you ever saw, by the way. I worked 90 hours a week. But anyway, thank God I met a wonderful man, Christian man, and we have a great life now. But during that 2 years, at the end of 2 years, I decided I didn't want to date. At the end of 2 years, I said, I think I'm ready now. And I went on a couple of dating sites. And I'm sharing with a friend of mine, hey, look at this guy. He's got a sailboat. This guy over here's got an airplane, you know? And she said, didn't you write a book on fantasy relationships? It was hysterical because I myself, it was like God wanted me to see just how this goes. The challenge with social media is hard to tell when you're in danger, especially if you're 11 and 12 years old and don't have cognitive reasoning. And it's even scarier if you're 8, 9, 10 years old and you haven't been through puberty, you don't know what adult sex is, and you can't tell what they're up to and how to defend yourself. So I like to share this to the kids in school. If you're 14 years old and you get a Snapchat like that, that's hot, baby, okay? Except you're getting this guy and he's ugly. I can't imagine a 14-year-old says, hey, baby, you're hot. But he had 300 teenage victims, 300 kids that he tricked into sending photos out there. So we're going to talk about the different kinds of sextortion and why. The first thing I really want to drive home is for our people, especially our faith-based community, to understand the devastating impact on the victim and their family. This is a life-changing event. We got to get past this idea of, well, what were you thinking when you sent them the photo? And, you know, it's just another photo online. This is life-changing and has a devastating impact. So what do they look for when they're looking for a victim, and how do we prepare our kids so they don't become a victim? First of all, they don't care how old you are, and they don't care what you look like. All you have to do is be available and vulnerable. Easy to recruit. That's what it's all about. If you're playing on a dating site, especially my LOL is the biggest one we're having cases on right now. Dating, another one was Crush. If you're playing on dating sites, you are available and vulnerable because you're making a billboard out there saying, I'm looking around. So we need to learn to be very careful on those types of sites. The hookup sites are equally scary, maybe more so, because a hookup site indicates you're not going to make a commitment. You're just looking to meet up with somebody, and it's very dangerous. I'm just going to show you the next slide in a minute because it's a little provocative, but I want you to see something. Grindr does not have an E in it. It's an LGBTQ site, and it is the biggest one. Grindr, Rentboy, and Sprut are the big ones. But all of those have geolocation software. I guess I didn't put it in. I decided it was too skip. All of those have geolocation software on it. So what happens is you get a 11-year-old boy and he's hearing stuff at school and he thinks, maybe I want an alternative lifestyle, but I don't want to tell my folks. So he goes on Grindr, and guess what? It gives them the person closest to where he's transmitting from. And this guy will come on and say, hey, we're only 3 miles apart. You know, you don't have to tell your folks, let's meet up and I will mentor you. So that is the danger of geolocation preference software, and almost all of it are on there today. So how do you get a kid where they're like bulletproof online? You teach a young person that you know who you are and what you stand for, especially as a Christian. You are a loved child of God, okay? And that's very important to understand that. Talk about self-esteem and that value of being a chosen child of God. Because I think so many kids, when I talk to them in schools, they think that self-esteem is something you get in the DNA, and it just didn't come in their family, okay? So that conversation is so important to say, once you make a decision that you're valuable, that you're a chosen child of God, nobody can take that away from you. And that gives you an ability to stand against these things. It is important that you have this discussion with your youth group, that there is no such thing as damaged goods. I was listening to the lady that was talking about her child that had got into sex trafficking. The first thing they do is gang rape you, film you, and then they say, you are so ruined, you can't leave. Everybody's seen this photo. They do the same thing with sextortion. Even if it's not them, you're ruined. You can't come back. Everybody's seen it. We need to get there first and let these kids know there is no such thing as damaged goods with God. Okay, poor decisions happen. You make mistakes, but you turn those mistakes around. And you can get that forgiveness. You can get that grace. And where else better to find it than the faith-based community? So it's never too late to change your life. And that conversation needs to be out there. Think about this generation. It's all about appearance. It's all about selfies. It's all about, and it's online for perpetuity. And it goes round and round and round. And these kids, they're going to make mistakes and it's going to be filmed. And we need to have that conversation that it's never too late to change that, regardless if it's out there online. I believe the other conversation we have to have that's so important is to talk about what is a healthy online relationship and in-person relationship, and what is an unhealthy or an exploitive relationship. Our kids fall in love online the same as if they're dating the kid down the street. But if they're dating the kid down the street, they can tell if they're living in mom's basement and only bathe on Tuesdays. You can't tell that online. So let's talk about the 3 most important things that will warn you that you're starting into an exploitive relationship. The first thing they'll do is move you from one app to the other. Just like I said on the TikTok, hey, baby, you're hot. Meet me on Instagram. Get me more photos. Why is that important? They're trying to verify that you're not law enforcement who has penetrated some undercover ring. And so they will move you, and they're also trying to see if you're available and vulnerable and willing to follow them. If we can teach our kids, I'm not going to follow you. I'm not going to fall for your stuff. I'm too good. I'm too valuable. I want to be somebody with my life, and I'm not going to have you change my life forever. So they'll move you from one app to the other, and they tell you, this is our little secret. Don't tell, okay? If they're saying this is our little secret, run, baby, run. Because I know I sound like a mother, I am, but if you can't be proud of who you are and what you're doing, maybe you shouldn't be doing it, okay? But those are the two. One, they move you. Two, they don't ask you not to tell. And then comes an illicit photo. They start to ask all the questions and you're doing all the answering. They're going to know more about you. They make demands and you're doing all the giving. That's not a relationship. That's a negotiation and you're losing. And they may want to meet up. So one of the most important messages out there from here on out, if anyone asks for an illicit photo, they are not your friend. The research indicates that 1 out of 5 boys have sent an illicit photo and 1 out of 6 girls has sent an illicit photo to an adult they've never met. That came from Thorne. So we have to get it through to them. They want your photo. They're going to put you in a blackmail prison for the rest of your life. If they want a photo, they are not your friend. You never meet up with someone you met online. I can tell you the number of kids who just want to see what he's like. And they go out and they get in that car and their life changes forever. So I talk with kids. Never, ever, ever, never, ever promise me you will never meet up with someone you meet online. So we talked about geolocation apps. Here's the thing I was looking for there. I got it out of place. So I want to share with you why they want nudes. And I share this with kids, and this is why we did the movie Sextortion. Where do all those nudes go when you hit send? Well, they go in a dark website. What happens is a world without borders for you is also a world without borders for pedophiles. And they go online, they give indicators to each other, they find each other, they exchange private addresses, and they go into the dark net. So there are groups of guys. I have several of the cases where kids are being violated and exploited by 8, 10, 12 different people and never realize it. This group here had thousands of victims, and not one of those kids knew they were talking to 9 different guys. They had never met, okay? They lived all over the United States. By the way, they all got more than 30 years in prison. So where are those photos going? Well, if you think of the internet as a bucket of water, the top 4% is where we live. We have search engines like Google and Chrome and IP addresses. Only 4% of the whole internet is the legitimate part where we all live. The deep web is for government and big corporations, and below that is the dark web. Now, you cannot go from the surface web to a dark web. And if any of you are connected to church schools, pay attention to this particular section, because I can't tell you the number of kids that I met training in church schools that have a dark web account, especially if they have more money. The way you get back and forth between the deep web and the dark web is called Tor, the onion router, T-O-R. So you don't just go back. If they say, oh, I don't know how it happened, it's an accident, they're lying. Because you need a Tor to go from surface web to the dark web. If your kid has a .onion account instead of .net, they're in the dark web and they need to be dealt with. They need to be reported. So why do they want so many of our kids' photos? Well, here was a guy who was arrested for child pornography. It's called CSAN now. And as what he was doing was he wanted to enter one of those rooms, and they want you to prove you're not an undercover law enforcement agent. So they give you a bot and they say, give us 3 photos of a child being violated. And then once you do that, you get 6 minutes to get 3 more videos of someone under the age of 10. That is why they want our kids' photos. So what is happening in this case is that this is the largest CSAM ring, child pornography ring, ever found. There were over 1 million paid subscribers, paying $200 million a year, every 6 months. That means some cartel in a foreign country is making $400 million a year by trading the sexual photos of our children, and that's all about money laundering. But for your children, think about this. If your child sends a photo to someone that's part of this dark web ring, they are going to have that photo go out to 1 million people just like that, and they will never get that back. They have lost all control. So what I want to just share with you a couple things, and I've got about 6 more minutes, so I'll get all this in I can. I might be a little bit late, but I'll hurry. This is a case out of Riverside. I was part of this case. And I want you to see this case. This is a case of a 15-year-old girl who fell in love with what she thought was a 17-year-old guy. He is really a 28-year-old law enforcement officer from Virginia. And what happened is this girl had this relationship. He drove out the day before a nosy neighbor, and I love nosy neighbors, okay? A nosy neighbor saw him drive through the cul-de-sac. On the day after Thanksgiving, he came back. And that nosy neighbor took a picture of his license plate. I loved it because otherwise this would have ended differently, but it ended bad. What happened is that while the 15-year-old, so let's get this straight. On the left is grandma and grandpa. On the right is mom. Mom has a 15-year-old and 11-year-old, okay? They're out shopping the day after Thanksgiving when this guy comes to the house. He talks to grandma and grandpa and flashes his badge. They called mom and said, the 15-year-old's in trouble at school. Can you bring her home? Fortunately, they left the 11-year-old off somewhere. Before all this happened, before mom got home, he strangled and suffocated grandma and grandpa. When she walked through, the mother walked through the door, he slit her throat. The 15-year-old walks in, sees it all, and he kidnaps her. Thank God the neighbor took a picture of the license plate so law enforcement could use license plate readers. They caught him at Needles as he's crossing the Arizona border, and he ended up killing himself. My point is, take this very, very seriously and share with our kids. Never, ever get in a car with a stranger, okay? This young girl from Bakersfield, and I can give you 100 of these cases if I had more time, but she was 13, he's 23. He lives in Inglewood. They hooked up together. Apparently it ended in oral sex according to the trial. But what happened is that one night, she put her clothes under her bedspread and snuck out of the bed. She was seen getting in that truck, and they later found her body where she had been raped and strangled and her body was burned. We have to talk with our kids about why they never get in a situation. Now, I want to finish off with this, and I'm going to give you about 5 things here in a minute, but I want you to see this is really, really scary business. Because now with third world countries having 5G high-speed internet, the cartels have taken over their poor kids. And this is really important for the lady out of Africa, but also all of you to help in understanding for your missionaries. Because they go in and they take very poor kids and they put them in telemarketing centers. I don't believe they're all there willingly. In Mexico, they just had 8 kids try to resign the telemarketing center, and the cartel just blew them away right there, murdered them on the spot. So I'm not convinced the young kids are doing this willingly, but they use the kids to be the chatters. So they look like a 14-year-old to our kids, okay? And this is where young boys are really at risk. In this case, this happens to be a telemarketing center out of the Philippines. I'm not going to play it for the interest of time. But what they're doing is get the young kids to chat and get our guys involved, and especially young guys. Now, these are not kids on the edge. These are like, homecoming kings and football stars. And this is all about making money, and this is absolutely ruthless, and we're just getting started. So what happens here is that the chatters lure the guy in, and then the closer, once they got the picture, it goes over to the real thugs, and they are ruthless. One kid literally had over 1,000 texts in 24 hours. These kids end up taking their own lives, and we are having an epidemic of this all across the nation. Every one of these kids, none of them had drug problems. They were Christian kids. They were kids that nobody thought there would be a problem. This is so brutal. These kids just panic, and they walk right by their parents and go out and take their own lives. Every one of these kids did this, okay? Every one of them. And they each have a separate story. But this has a devastating impact on the family and on the kid, because this kind of blackmail is forever. I share with kids, the minute you have that photo out there, your life has changed until you tell someone and ask for help. It's the feeling of shame and panic. I have a whole chapter on this on the book Societal Shift. So if you or somebody you know is being blackmailed, we have to have that conversation with our teenagers, because with deep fakes, this can be anybody. By the way, one of the things that I hear with kids, the boys will say, Mom, I didn't send a photo. I didn't send a photo. I didn't send a video. No, they've hooked up with a hot girl on a chat site, and they forget live streaming works both ways, and they're caught on camera. The minute it happens, it becomes all about money. So we need to share with kids, first of all, look out for each other now, and don't ever send that photo so that they can't trap you. But even if that happens, remember, there is a way out with us and with God. And don't forget the impact of this on a family. I worked with a father one day whose 11-year-old daughter sent things, and I never forget him. I never met him, but I worked with him for 3 hours. And he said, you know, I look at her like she's broken, you know, and she hasn't even been through puberty. And he said, I get mad at myself. I get mad at my wife. I can't work. I can't sleep. I can't eat, you know, and it just is a devastating impact. So I believe this does not have to happen. If you give me another 3-4 minutes, I'm going to give you some things to do. Number one, I hope that you will consider developing a teen outreach program where you tell it like it is and you help them understand this. Talk about blackmail, talk about digital reputation, talk about getting addicted to online pornography, especially if it's animated pornography. So many kids will tell you, well, sex on the internet's not sex and killing isn't killing. I had one church, 1/4 of the youth group tell me sin on the internet was not sin. And I'm like, well, I hope that works out for you. I'm not sure that. Have those conversations. Discuss the impact of animated pornography. Is killing a cop, even in a video game online? You need to have that kind of talk. Make a contract between your parent and your child. Every app you have, I'm going to have, and you're going to teach it to me, okay? And you're going to agree that you're never going to send anything that's going to cause pain to you and I, because it's a life-changing experience. I want you to promise me you'll never go out and meet up with someone you met online. And if you get caught, trust me enough that you will come and talk, that you won't panic. So this is me at the end of the day, only I got hair, okay? The stakes are really, really high for this generation. One bad decision can change absolutely everything. What you can do when they report, listen, do not alert the pedophile. I know you want to, if you catch it and you catch your kid in this, you want to grab that thing and you go, you lousy, blah, 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 leave my kid alone. Do not do that. Do not delete the photos. In fact, screenshot them, and do not show those photos to everybody. That is your child's dignity. And then go to cyber crimes at your local law enforcement and let them look. Then everybody gets counseling. And I'm going to encourage all of you in the faith-based community to develop counseling for your people. Develop counseling in your staff and develop counseling for your parents so that they can come to you and you can walk through it. Now, I didn't have time to show you the trailer because I talked too long, but this is on Amazon, iTunes, and Apple TV. And I hope you'll watch it. I hope you'll show it to your youth group and your parents. It is fit for anybody of any age, and it doesn't have anything pornographic in it, but it is a powerful story. It's called Sextortion, the Hidden Pandemic. And it's a powerful story about how all of this takes place. Finally, this is how you report if you have any kind of child abuse, human trafficking, or sextortion online. And this is how you can reach me if you want to support our organization, or if you want to get involved, or if you want to contact me and ask anything, you can. At me and Kids, we have a YouTube site where you can get a lot of this kind of thing. So, bam, bam, bam. I'm a little late, but I got it in. Thank you.
Oh, that was fantastic. We all loved it. And for anyone who registered for this event, we are going to send out the recording of the event. Yeah, thank you very much so that they have it. One thing I'm always asked by parents is how can they monitor their children's online activity? I had stealth apps on my children, all my children's devices like 20 years ago. And I did tell them to tell me if they did anything stupid that I wouldn't get mad. And they said, you're lying, you will get mad. And I said, okay, you're right. I will get mad, but I'll get over it.
That's good. I love it. You know,
Yeah.
be honest with them. They know you.
We're going to complete, and Opal mentioned funding. If anyone would like to contribute to her effort, she's doing a phenomenal job, and God calls you to do that, please do. So we're going to complete, and I'm going to end the Zoom call, and thank you again for everyone for being here. Thank you.
Bye.